Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're jumping right into a really fascinating explainer. We're going to take a journey essentially starting from raw, visceral, emotional outrage and work our way all the way to a profound understanding of modern legal philosophy. Right? It's a topic that touches the very core of human relationships, testing exactly where our private feelings end and where societal rules actually begin. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through this, so let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Should infidelity be included in marriage law? I mean, just hearing that question probably provokes an immediate, intense reaction, right? It's a highly emotional, massively controversial question that honestly just constantly resurfaces in our public debate. Every few years, a massive public scandal breaks out, and suddenly the internet is flooded with demands to legally punish betrayal. But why? Why does this specific issue keep coming back to the forefront of our collective consciousness?
Well, to figure that out, here is our roadmap for today's explainer. Number 1, eternal debates and emotions. 2, the true boundary of law. 3, divide of action and thought. 4, clash of reason and intuition. And finally, number 5, civilization is a required course. Let's unpack this rationally, step by step. Section 1, eternal debates and emotions. Why we keep arguing over settled issues. Let's acknowledge right off the bat that the public reaction to personal betrayal is entirely visceral. The pain of infidelity is very, very real. Yet, from a legal standpoint, the framework around this has actually long been settled. So, why do we constantly reopen the case? The answer really lies in this profound concept. Civilization cannot be inherited. Seriously, think about it for a second. As humans, we physically inherit our blood type, our skin color, our facial features, all of that comes through our genes. But we absolutely do not genetically inherit the intellectual achievements of our ancestors. Civilization just isn't genetic. It is a rigorous cultural course that every single generation literally has to retake from scratch. Without continuous active education about what constitutes rights, where legal boundaries actually lie, what freedom truly means, and what our responsibilities are, society naturally slips backward. When memory fractures or when education loosens up, we default right back to raw emotion and basic instinct, basically treating long-solved historical questions as if they're brand new dilemmas. And that brings us right to Section 2, the true boundary of law. Emotion versus sanction. Because if we step away from our instincts and look at modern legal philosophy, there's a very specific reason why the law strictly stays out of personal relationship betrayals. If you take away just one concept from today, let it be this. The law is a guardian of boundaries, not a referee of morals. This is absolutely crucial. If we were to suddenly draft infidelity into marriage law, we'd be making a monumental shift. We'd essentially be taking emotional choices, the internal shifting of human affection, and turning them into targets for legal punishment. Infidelity at its absolute core begins as a flow of thought and emotion, and by itself, thought doesn't inflict physical harm or inherently violate another person's human rights. If we allow the law to start policing thoughts and feelings, it stops protecting our boundaries and starts judging our souls, which deeply, deeply threatens our freedom of thought. And this brilliantly illustrates a legacy we inherited over 500 years ago from the Renaissance and the rise of humanism. Western societies slowly established this core foundational principle. The law regulates actions, not ideas. It constrains tangible harm, not internal feelings. Thoughts are completely harmless to society until they cross the line into actual, damaging actions. Because thoughts are harmless, modern civilization grants them absolute freedom. Moving right along to Section 3, divide of action and thought. What marriage law actually does. When we strip away all the societal romance and the vows, we really have to look at the cold, rational mechanics of the institution itself. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how transactional the actual legal structure is when we break it down. The core functions of marriage law are essentially economic and structural. It regulates property relations, meaning who owns what. It regulates support responsibilities, essentially who cares for whom, especially when it comes to children. And it regulates the order of inheritance. So forget the poetry and the romance for a minute. Marriage law doesn't mandate love. It mandates responsibility. Notice the stark divide here. On the left side, we have what is punishable by law. If an affair leads to the malicious transfer or hiding of joint property, or if it causes substantive harm to a child's right to financial support, you better believe the law will aggressively step in.
Why? Because those are tangible harms to property and survival. But look on the right. We have what is unpunishable by law, emotional shifts, and the free flow of human thoughts. The blade of the law has to stop at provable damage. It is simply not equipped, nor was it ever intended, to probe the hidden, messy corners of the human heart. Let's move to Section 4, Clash of Reason and Intuition. The ancient conflict between system and emotion. You see, there's this ancient, ongoing conflict between cold, abstract system design and fiery mass emotion, and history gives us the perfect anchor to understand this.
Ancient Chinese philosophy recognized a concept roughly translated as rituals do not go down to the common people. Now, today, that might sound like blatant elitism, but historically, it was a highly practical mechanism for social regulation. The ancients completely understood that highly abstract, heavily rationalized systems, like strict legal logic, cannot just be forced upon the general public without comprehensive education. If you take a cold mathematical system of rules and drop it directly onto a public driven by intense human emotion, you don't get order. You get intense conflict and outright rejection.
Take this genuinely shocking quote from the Eastern Han Dynasty, roughly 1800 years ago. The famous scholar Kong Rong, when he was 50 years old, stated, "Parents and children have no grace, meaning no private favor." He was arguing from a strictly systemic perspective, basically saying raising a child isn't a private favor you bestow, it's a role-based duty. Caring for elderly parents isn't some transactional payback, it's an ethical obligation. Logically, he was completely right within that framework, but even across thousands of years, that cold, rational truth deeply angers people because it strips away the warm, emotional intuition of family love. It perfectly proves why strict, rational logic clashes so violently with human emotion.
Which brings us to our final section. Civilization is a required course. The danger of anger-driven design. Let's zoom out to the macro level for a second and look at the profound consequences of letting mass public outrage actually write our rulebooks. So the crucial point is this. Institutional design must never be driven by anger. When people demand the law punish infidelity, their emotional desire for justice is completely valid. Seriously, it comes from a very real place of heart. However, if we allow our legal systems to be designed by that anger, the law will not stop at infidelity. It will begin an infinite expansion directly into our most private lives. Consider this terrifying slippery slope. If we concede step 1, using public power to punish the private act of infidelity, what logically follows? Well, step 2, we begin punishing ideological disloyalty, thinking the wrong things about your partner or your society. And then, step 3, punishing emotional wavering. Maybe you didn't act on it, but your heart wasn't fully committed. When the law starts punishing the internal landscape of the mind rather than external provable harm, civilization isn't advancing. It's actually quietly, dangerously moving backward into totalitarianism. Which leaves us with this final, vital question to really reflect on today. Are we letting raw emotion overwrite the hard-won boundaries of modern civilization? Remember, civilization isn't just inherited. It's a difficult course we have to constantly study. So the next time public outrage demands a legal solution to a problem of the heart, ask yourself, are we truly seeking justice, or are we simply indulging our instincts at the cost of our hard-won freedom? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking the hard questions, and I'll see you next time.